we do want to look ahead to the third Saturday in October. And for that, we're going to bring on the publisher of BamaOnLine, that is Tim Watts. Tim, thanks so much for joining us here this evening. How is the weekend homecoming for Alabama? Was that right?
Yeah, it wasn't a whole lot of fun. It was an early 11 o'clock game. They had a struggle in the second half. You kind of could see a little bit coming. Maybe they got off to a quick start, so you hope they avoided that trap game. But coming off a very emotional game against Texas A&M, you got Tennessee next week. You got LSU the week after that. So back-to-back revenge games for Alabama. And then you had Arkansas at 11 a.m. in the morning, and a scrappy Arkansas team. I know they've lost 5 in a row, but they've been extremely competitive. But once Alabama jumped out to that big lead, you kind of felt they were going to ride away, and they didn't. And, they had to play a little defense and close out the game with a few first downs. So not quite probably the ending they expected, but a tough game, a good win.
I like your Sopranos. You look like you're in the old Sopranos movie.
Here's what I'm glad, Eric. Let me tell you what I'm glad about.
I mean, that's serious right there. Now.
15 years. I didn't hear from Brent Hubbs for 15 years, and 1 year ago today, this is our anniversary. He decides to call me. I'm not saying it's a coincidence. But 1 year ago today, he's like, "Hey, buddy." That's
not true.
Austin Price and Grant Ramey. I can't. Yeah. Oh, man, Austin, 5 times a day.
Yeah, right.
Mr. Hubbs is like 15 years. Forget about it. Exactly like so. Forget about it. But now he's back. So I'm going to enjoy him while I got him. But thanks for having me on, guys.
I do want to ask you, Tim, about this Alabama offense. Obviously, Jalen Milroe played well in the second half, in particular against Texas A&M. Got off to the good start yesterday. How much more footing do they have offensively compared to where they were 14 days ago even?
Yeah, I think they're, what the thing about the Alabama offense is pretty inconsistent. I mean, the first half, it's literally a Dickens novel, the best of times and the worst of times. In the first half, they were really good, hard to stop, threw a few short passes, hit some deep balls. Came out in the second half, established the run. But in the second half, passing-wise, they really just couldn't find anything going. A lot of his passes sailed on him, felt some pressure, but also, had some pressure. So he's kind of a first-year quarterback doing the things. But, he's had a lot of experience. You're hoping he takes those steps. And it's not like the pressure's not coming. I mean, you're in the SEC. Everybody's got an edge rusher. Tennessee certainly's got an edge rusher, and James Pierce, a guy that we love. Charles Power ranked him extremely high. I was a huge fan of him coming out of high school. He's a guy. Y'all got other guys that can come, and LSU's got some guys. So you're going to face that kind of pressure anyways. But really, the middle of the field is the area. It's not. You don't really see him establishing the run consistently yet. And there's been some questions about the offensive line. It's a little leaky.
All right, so flip it on the other side. Defensively, you got Dallas Turner, who's obviously a really good player. Secondary the last couple of years has not been to the Nick Saban standard. How much better are they back there, and how much better is this defense getting?
Yeah, I think the defense is what you'll recognize the most from past Alabama teams. I mean, you've got Dallas. He's probably got 7 or 8 sacks. Chris Braswell's probably got a handful of sacks. They get a lot of pressure. They got Deontay Lawson, who's a really good inside backer. Trez Marshall, who transferred from Georgia, has been a guy that gets a lot of pressure on the quarterback. But, yeah, the back end, they lost some guys last year, but they brought back Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think most people expect him to be a first-round cornerback. And Terrion Arnold, who was it took him a little while for it to click, and he suffered some bumps and bruises last year. But he's really, really become a good player at that other cornerback position. Malachi Moore, who's injured, he's a guy that's done really well. And they've got the freshman All-American, or he will be a freshman All-American, and Caleb Downs that came in, very highly recruited guy.
When you look at the offensive line, again, you mentioned, Tennessee's got some pass rushers. You got James Pierce, you got Tyler Barron. You mentioned it's been a struggle to consistently run the football like, Alabama would want to, week to week to week. How much of a worry is it maybe from an Alabama perspective of Tennessee's defensive line? And it's a group that's going to play 10 to 12 guys.
Yeah, I think the first thing you have to do is try to lock down that left side. Proctor, who was a highly regarded guy. Some people have number 1 offensive tackle in the country, but still he's a true freshman. A year ago, he was playing Iowa high school football. So, there's a big difference. There's not a lot of James Pierces and those type of guys running around Iowa as compared to as we're used to seeing in the South. So offensive line has its moments. I mean, they've given up a lot of sacks. I think they're 130 or somewhere around that in the country and giving up sacks this year. They established the run, but it's just the inconsistency with it. Now, part of that, I think, is the quarterback play. I think sometimes, your quarterback, and y'all are familiar with this, certainly, he can get out of the pocket they've created for him and put some pressure on himself. And we've seen a little bit of that with the inexperienced quarterback. But also, I think you hear those footsteps, and sometimes the footsteps real. So it's kind of like two problems going hand in hand. And with all that said, the offense hasn't been atrocious. They've had some plays. They had good plays against Texas A&M. That game should have been a little bit easier of a win. They had a block field goal a block kick returned for a touchdown called back on a penalty way behind the play. Had a lot of penalties, kind of similar to the Tennessee game last year for Alabama penalty-wise, but they were able to escape College Station with a win.
How good's Burton playing at the receiver spot, Tim?
Man, he's really good. He's a natural ball catcher. He's like a center fielder. He tracks it as well as anybody you can see. He's got that toe tap. He's a problem. He's got a big body and all that. Now he's an emotional guy. That's one thing to watch. He's there for the big games. Just one that Bama fans have noticed. He's very, very emotional, but they kind of feed off of him. He's got a lot of experience. I mean, he played against Alabama in the national championship game, played in every game for Alabama last year. They was healthy in this year, but you kind of see that maybe he's becoming that safety blanket a little bit for Jalen. Jalen's able to find him because he feels comfortable. He took a shot with him that wasn't successful, but you could tell he trusted Burton to have a chance to go and make that play.
Tim, Jalen Milroe is at his best when he is doing what? When the team is setting him up in this position? When is Milroe at his best?
I think he's at his best when he's got a clean pocket, some time to throw. I mean, Alabama's got fast wide receivers. If you look at those guys, some of them are track guys and guys that are developing into the wide receiver position, but the wide receiver room's pretty deep and pretty talented. So I think Milroe, when you give him that pocket, he's able to look down the field. A lot of bombs this year, and you'll remember Blake Sims at Alabama, kind of similar to that. He had Amari Cooper, and they were able to drop back. Lane Kiffin just wore that, would wear those plays out. I think that's where he's at his absolute best.
How effective is he running the football? How much is he using his legs? How much are they asking him to use his legs?
Not as much as he was. He's not running like he was. I mean, there's been talk that he's got a little bit of an injury. I think it's more about protecting him myself. I think you don't want to put him at risk of getting hurt. You're kind of all in on Jalen Milroe being your guy this year, right? So you don't want to take any chances. He's still capable of running. He got a huge third down play to keep the ball from getting back to Arkansas at the end of the game. He had a nice little run. Not what you're probably expecting from a guy that, I mean, I keep saying it, but I mean, he looks just like Adrian Peterson to be. Big, strong, ripped, fast, big old muscular kid. You don't see many quarterbacks that probably are, probably going to stand out in a weight room like that, but not as much as you would expect when you look at him right now.
Is that just because of where they are with the backup situation? They don't want to take a chance on getting him hurt because –
Well, he's running a little different to me than he is. I mean, that could be him protecting himself. He'll tell you, he's always considered himself a pocket passer to begin with. So I think that's part of it, just the mentality of what he wants to be and what he wants to see. They haven't had a lot of runs just for him, like power quarterback runs. They had one against Arkansas. It went for 8 yards, and he slid a nice little run. So, I mean, they might be saving that for some bigger opponents coming up the road. I mean, it wasn't a great time. I wouldn't say Texas A&M is a great team to run against. I mean, they're fast, they're athletic. They could put a hurt on you. So, and maybe, trying to get through Arkansas and not show a lot with Tennessee and LSU, on the horizon.
But he is a guy that if you force him out of the pocket, evade him and get him out there, and he's going to take off and run, right?
Oh, yeah. He's not a big stiff guy. He's not Dan Marino. I mean, he can pull that thing down and run with it. I mean, he's a smooth athlete. All the things. When you look at him, he's about what you'd expect.
Will they use him? And I know we're talking about him running the football a lot here, but in the red zone, inside the 10, inside the 5, will they use him to run in that situation? I see he's got 5 touchdowns on the season.
Yeah, I think that's part of it is, though, for his scrambling ability. I mean, when he drops back to pass, I mean, when you got 3 or 4 receivers down the field, they got nice tight ends, too. Amari Niblack's emerged really well. C.J. Dupre is a transfer who's, I think, hasn't had a big game yet. He had a big catch against South Florida, but he has that potential in Robbie Hoots. So they got a nice little tight end room. But when you spread that thing out, he's got lanes to run in. I think most teams are spying him, and rightly so, trying to spy him. Texas did a great job of keeping a guy near him and limiting that. I think he sees that spy, but when you've got somebody spying, you've got one less defender for the wide receiver, so it's a little bit better chance of completing a pass there. So,
Tim, what do you like best about this version of this Alabama team, and what is your biggest concern as a guy covering this team about this Alabama team?
Yeah, my biggest concern is the offensive line. Obviously, you want to give that quarterback as much time and protection as you can. Goes hand in hand with establishing the running game. They've got good running backs. I mean, they've got Justice Haynes, a freshman who hasn't played a lot, one of the top freshmen in the country last year. They got Jace McClellan. He's a load. I mean, that's a big Texas kid, and he knows how to move the chains and get behind his pad. They've got guys that can run the ball. That's my biggest concern, because I think you have a good offensive line protecting the quarterback. It'll give him a little bit more confidence, but also Jalen's got to be more consistent. They're going to rely on their defense, I think, at the end of the day. With all this said, I think their defense is going to carry them as far as they're going to go for the most part.
Tim, you mentioned earlier a revenge game for Alabama, of course, the LSU game, the Tennessee game. How do fans view this game for Tennessee? It's a game that Alabama's won for so many years. Tennessee got them last year, a long off season. How are fans viewing this game coming up this Saturday?
You're not as old as me and Brent, Eric, so you might not know. This game is nothing but streaks. Like when I grew up, and I'm very familiar with this rivalry. We had three brothers. Two were huge Tennessee fans. The other was an Alabama fan. And we know, like, you can go 8 years without rubbing it in anybody's face. It got kind of bored. Like, we didn't even talk trash to each other at some stage. We're like, see you in 7, I think it definitely – I've always felt the rivalry from the old diehard fans. I think with younger fans, it might have been, Florida at one point, Georgia at one point, and LSU's a big deal. But for me, it's always been a massive game. And that game last year, I think you have to lose something to know how much it means to you. Because when y'all were chugging that goalpost around, there was a lot of people realized that game meant a lot more to them. Like I was getting texts like, wait a minute. We were debating 2 weeks ago whether this is a rivalry game. I had to bail you out tonight, buddy. So I think it's always been there, and it's just better when it's competitive.
Yeah, and it's fun. I mean, and again, a lot of the younger fans don't grasp it, because Tennessee hadn't done their part in the longest time for it, and then there's a time where Alabama didn't do their part. But for the older fans, this has always been the game. It will always be the game. For the end of time for those guys. And so I think there'll be a lot of intensity in this one. And I think this one will be really, really physical. It's kind of Tim, it feels like it's going to be a little bit of a throwback compared to what we've seen. I mean, it's got the vibe of a kind of a defensive slugfest, which is the last thing you would kind of think about when you think Alabama offense the last few years. And certainly you think about what Josh Heupel's done. It feels like it's got a little old school vibe to it coming up on Saturday.
I mean, can you imagine a 17-14, 17-13 game after last year's? You talking about emotional shock. I mean, that, last year was unbelievably one of the wildest games I've ever seen. So if it is, but I agree with you. I think the defenses are both pretty solid. Tennessee certainly did a good job this week and against Texas A&M. Max Johnson, he's not a bad quarterback. I've seen people criticizing him, but man, Alabama and Tennessee beat that kid to death. And I mean, he was still standing at the end. So just a testament to how tough he is. But I don't think it's going to be I wouldn't expect us to be in the 40s, both sides to be in the 40s. But emotionally, I think Alabama fans will be really, really up for this game, which is a good thing. And then again, they got LSU right away. And also, I think the crowd will be great because if you looked at Alabama's schedule last year, all their really good games were on the road. They had one of the tough. They were at Texas, they're at Tennessee, they're at LSU. They didn't have many good home games. And then this year they get Texas, of course, they get Tennessee, and they get LSU. So the fans will be fired up for this. And 2:30 start. It should be a lot of excitement. Look at this. You're not my dad. Because I would be in jail for killing my father, first of all. So we know that's not true. Look at him sneaking in.
Look at that. Look at that Sopranos set that
I just doubled my speaking
fee. Godfather's got AP. I mean, look at that Godfather's
speaking fee. This
alone. I mean, you got the Crimson Wall. You got the big script A up there on the football. Who was that signed by? Was that signed by?
Roman Harper, Nick Saban, and George Teague would be those balls. And if you look at their office, I'm up on top of their shelf as well. So
My wife gets so mad.
it's like us swapping jersey. We just swap balls.
Well, my wife gets so mad when I do these things. I said, I'm going to go up and jump on, put Watts' daddy as my name. And she's like, that's stupid. Don't do it. And then she's texting me, this is stupid.
Yeah, sure. You're well. She married you, so I might need to text her. Carol, we all make bad decisions. This Price.
Tim, I have one more question for you
Sure,
before you
man.
hop off.
Sure.
We kind of broke down how this might be a little bit of a throwback. It's got that defensive feel, and I know you'll continue to dig into Tennessee as the week goes on. But if you're Alabama, seeing how well Tennessee runs it, how Tennessee struggles, down the field passing, how would you attack Tennessee's offense if you're Saban in that defense?
Well, I think they're comfortable in the secondary when you got two pretty good cornerbacks. So I think you can let them go one-on-one. They've had success. Alabama is kind of, Alabama's success. They did really well stopping the run this year. And we're going to see that this week. I mean, Tennessee's loading it up. They're pressing, they're pushing the ball right up the middle. Alabama's defensive lines did a good job. Their linebackers have been very active. They've been good. Safeties played coming downhill. So I think that's it. You stop the run, you make them pass. I'm imagining both defensive coordinators are trying to make Milton or Milroe beat them in the air, I would think, to some degree, limit them, pressure the quarterback and limit what they do on the ground. I think it's probably going to be similar game plans there.
I would imagine so, yeah. And we'll see it all play out. Third Saturday in October. That's coming up on Saturday.
Why is Austin so stiff? Why is he like, relax, dude? Like, relax. You look like.
I am relaxed.
He's a pro.
Tim, I'm your attorney.
He's a TV pro.
Hey,
I've never seen him wear one shirt. Have y'all ever seen just one? It's like two sweaters, a shirt, and a friggin' vest. How cold is it in your house, Miss Price? We got to turn that heat up, my boy.
hey, just remember, during the game Saturday, my wife will put the Christmas tree up. So, I mean,
No way.
You'd come on next. 100%. 2 years ago. See? Look at me.
That's your wife?
2 years ago, I was in the press box at Alabama. My wife sends me a picture. She goes, I decided to go ahead and put it on up. I'm like, okay.
Hey, nothing like handing out your Halloween candy and it's Little Debbie Christmas tree cakes to go with your Christmas tree.
Have some candy canes.
Hey,
absolutely.
Hey, I am relaxed. Because I got the latest intel on George McIntyre over here at Volquest.com.
Well, I just copied and put it on BOL.com, so we're all good here. This ain't like the old days. This is open season. We can read everybody's stuff now.
Keeping the family.
Yes, absolutely.
No question.
Good luck, you guys. Travel safe to Tuscaloosa. I appreciate you. It's good to meet you, Eric.
Good to meet you.
Awesome. I love you guys.
All right.
Leave the key underneath the stone out front, and I'll see you Friday night. Okay.
If you come here Friday night, we're putting up our Christmas trees. How you like that? You come over here and see what happens.
Sounds good.
See you, brother.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
Later
I'll
on, man.
bring orange lights, Watts.
Later, dude.